Si, Candace Savage Nitsikatsun, Misaskotumani Kochenia. Hello, my name is Candace Savage, and I am speaking to you from Misaskotumani, Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. As you can tell, I've spent a little time this winter learning a few words of Pasquanaheyawaywan, Plains Cree, just one of the languages that belong to this land and that it is good to hear spoken here. So, Tawau. It is my privilege as Chair of Wild About Saskatoon to welcome you to tonight's event, the second in our series of online Nature City conversations. I'm speaking to you from Treaty 6 territory and the homeland of the Métis Nation in a spirit of Koyesk Astasawan, setting things right. As we were reminded by the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, and I'm quoting here, reconciliation requires talking, but conversations must be broader than Canada's conventional approaches. Reconciliation between Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal Canadians also requires reconciliation with the natural world. If human beings resolve problems between themselves, but continue to destroy the natural world, then reconciliation remains incomplete. This is a perspective that we as commissioners have repeatedly heard, that reconciliation will never occur unless we are also reconciled with the earth. Mi'kmaq and other Indigenous laws stress that humans must journey through life in conversation and negotiation with all creation. So, several years back, the city of Saskatoon officially declared its commitment to grow in harmony with nature. And with this goal in mind, in the spring of 2020, just a year ago, Council approved a green infrastructure strategy, pledging to connect, protect, and restore our urban green spaces as sustainable habitats for people and other living things to live, as the TRC invited us to, in conversation and negotiation with all creation. This is exciting and forward-looking work, and at Wild About Saskatoon, we've been wondering how things are moving ahead. What has happened in the years since the strategy was approved? What steps are being taken to move the plan off the page and into the living landscape of this special place that we call home? How can conserving natural assets help us face the challenges of climate change, biodiversity loss, and cultural and social dislocation? Tonight, we are fortunate to have speakers from the City of Saskatoon and the Meewasin Valley Authority with us, ready to begin addressing those questions for us. I'll be turning the screen over to them or to my cat shortly. I also want to acknowledge the behind the scenes hands who are making all of this possible. Amanda and Lucinda from the Saskatchewan Festival of Words, who are providing technical support. But first, to set the stage for our discussion in a good way, it is my pleasure to introduce Janelle Piwapskonius, Eco Arbori Janelle. She is a Nehayao spoken word artist, mother, and social innovator based in Little Pine First Nation. As an artist, she practices, organizes, and continues on the cultural tradition of oral and spoken word storytelling about Indigenous survivance and connection to the land. Janelle.
Good evening, everyone. Gigawino askina sigason, manaiko sisnia ute, and I acknowledge the land, Treaty 6 territory and homeland of the Métis. I acknowledge the land, the coming together, the handshake, our forever, eternal promises made between all our sovereign nations and Creator. etched in the skies from ceremonial pipe smoke, inked with feathered pen, with beautiful intentions for the great, great, great ancestors and grandchildrens of this land. I acknowledge this treaty. Treaties we make in Fort Carlton and Fort Pitt, I acknowledge the struggle and the lives that gave themselves for it. It reads, we are all treaty people, and this we all know. It reads, we shall share this land forever, for as long as these grasses grow, for as long as these rivers flow, for as long as these suns shine. I am your neighbor and you are mine. This was before we signed any X on the line, in promises and languages yet to be described and transcribed into agreements. This is all foreign languages, yet we kept it with honor and passed it down like teachings in medicine bundles, and we honor each word. It is peace. Uplift, be, live your treaty, and you can find the meaning between the writing and the lines, found more than a plow's depth buried beneath our feet. We acknowledge the land. And we acknowledge the ancestors. And when we put our ears to these grounds, we can hear them. The Cree and the Métis, the Dene, the Soto and Anishinaabe, the Innu, Dakota, Lakota nations, the Inuit, the Blackfoot and Innu, and all that came before us, and all the nations that have yet to be formed. We put our feet to the ground, and we can feel them, both hoof and foot, paw and root, building onward. Infinity of prints and pathways of those who have long called this land our home. Treaty, we can awake and open our eyes to see it, witnessing the unfolding of our teachings in bundles, the undoing of colonization, the opening of land to let this treaty become alive, and we affirm our continued relationship with each other, with the land, with those who come to this place. We acknowledge and pay respects where no one is illegal, and we pay respects to the indigenous nations because whose treaty is it on? And so we acknowledge the land, and we acknowledge Treaty 6 territory. This is homeland of the Métis too. And so I thought it was fitting to open with that poem. And I've shared versions of it in different forums. And this one is especially important to me because there needs to be a bridging between the indigenous nations to the BIPOC communities, to the settler communities. We need to acknowledge the story of this territory, and how do you even get to be able to preserve nature is because of treaty. It's because of treaty. It's because of treaty. So acknowledge that and form your thoughts and good feelings around that. And I want to share one last poem with you. It's called Listen to the Learning. And this is about listening to the land. Because we are a student of the land. Listen with 2 ears and 2 eyes and open hands. Reflect the free sky with you. Your body stretch across the ground with you. Become the moss along the prairie beaches with you. You are a tree reaching to the ancestors. You are a learner of this land. Use your one mouth to only ask questions, to be open to the teachings, to reply, not just to respond, but to be humble. For we'll always be a student, for she will always teach us, for we will always be learners of the land. So thank you so much, Candace and the Nature City team, for inviting me to come out today. This topic is so important and foundational to building a better tomorrow for people even as small as our children. Thank you for inviting me today. Muestas, we'll see you later, and have a good night. Thank you.
Kananaskumten, Janelle.
Thank you.
Thank you so very much for those beautiful and generous words. They'll echo through the rest of our evening. So we are going to have two updates tonight about the City of Saskatoon's plan to live in harmony with this land, including one from Andrea Lafond, who is the CEO of Saskatoon's mandated conservation agency, the Meewasin Valley Authority. But first, we're going to hear from two people who are responsible for moving the city's own green strategy forward. They are Jessie Best and Katie Burns. And if you have a question for Jessie or Katie or for Andrea later, please enter them into the chat and we'll return to them after their talks. We really, really do want to hear what your response to what is being said. So a few words of introduction. Jessie Best is a professional agrologist with a background in renewable resource management. She works as an environmental project manager for the City of Saskatoon, where she has collaborated on the Green Infrastructure Strategy, the Healthy Yards Program, and various other initiatives over the last 3 years. And if you want to know about restoring prairie on a small holding near Saskatoon by using sheep as grazers, she's your gal. Katie Burns holds 2 degrees in history, as well as a Master's of Environmental Studies from York University. She has served in a variety of positions within the City of Saskatoon over the last 7 years and is currently the city's Community Leadership and Program Development Manager. So I'm going to turn the screen over through the magic of the Saskatchewan Festival of Words to Jessie.
All right, thank you so much, everyone. I am hoping that this is working. Can't quite see what's happening on my end. There we go. All right. Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining our presentation today. A special thank you to Janelle for your beautiful and powerful opening words. To Candace and the rest of Wild About Saskatoon and the Saskatchewan Festival of Words for organizing this event, and to Andrea and the Meewasin staff who have been integral to this work. Today, Katie and I will be providing an update on the Green Infrastructure Strategy, including what work has been completed so far and what... I'm being told that, that you can't hear me.
We can hear you.
You can? Okay. Cool. Sounds good. Go back to... Sorry, everyone. Oh, there we go. Today, Katie and I will be providing an update on the Green Infrastructure Strategy, including what work has been completed so far and what is being planned for 2021 and beyond. We do first want to acknowledge that the land we are on has been inhabited since time immemorial and continues to be by our Indigenous community. The Green Infrastructure Strategy is fundamentally about our relationship with this cultural landscape, and so acknowledging our shared history and reaffirming our commitment to reconcile with the land and our community is crucial to its implementation. The Green Infrastructure Strategy was written with input from many voices. Among others, we were very fortunate to have significant input from the city's Indigenous Technical Advisory Committee, and we are very grateful for their input into the strategy. We also acknowledge that for many of us, the connection to the land is deeply personal, and our shared history is complex. Relationships have not been equitable, And many of those who now call Saskatoon home have had to leave their own homes and are looking to build a new relationship with this land. So it's important to remember that the work we do isn't limited to plans on paper, but must be completed in partnership with the community so that we can create a safe and welcoming green network for all. The importance of connection to the land was also reflected in our community engagement during development of the strategy. We heard many stories about how passionate residents are about the green network. With that in mind, there is a reason that community was included as our first theme in the strategy, which I'll get into in a little while, because no actions that we are proposing will be possible without the community, and that includes our ongoing work towards truth and reconciliation. As a bit of a preamble to the rest of the presentation, I want to take a moment to define some of the terms we use in the strategy, as our work can become a bit jargony if we're not careful. We usually think of infrastructure as buildings, roads, pipes, and other elements in our built environment that provide important services to citizens. But cities are also increasingly thinking of their green spaces, natural areas, wetlands, rivers, trees, soil, and other forms as a form of green infrastructure, because these natural features also provide services to citizens. One focus of green infrastructure is sustainable service delivery, which emphasizes how we can both incorporate nature into the city to provide services such as stormwater management and use nature-inspired design to support other municipal services. The city's green infrastructure exists on a spectrum of natural to built assets, with larger sites like natural areas and wetlands in less developed areas, and more engineered green infrastructure in our built-up areas of the city. Since different approaches towards green infrastructure management are needed, we have organized the actions in the strategy into 5 themes: community, governance, open space, ecology, and stormwater. Throughout our document, we say that nature provides ecosystem services that are harder to replicate than they are to conserve. These ecosystem services are the benefits that nature provides to citizens and cities, often for free, in a way that complements our built assets. For example, a green roof can help mitigate heating or cooling needs for a building. Increasing soil volume or soil quality can reduce irrigation needs or remediate pollution, and a wetland can help mitigate stormwater runoff. In some cases, we can quantify the ecosystem services that green infrastructure is providing us. This is an emerging field, but as we deepen our understanding, we will be able to determine service levels for green infrastructure that better reflect the ecosystem services that it provides to the city. When green infrastructure is designed holistically and connected, it becomes an interconnected green network that enhances the urban environment and improves quality of life. Connectivity is a very important concept to touch on here. Ecologists know that connectivity is essential for biodiversity, and urban environments present a unique challenge to maintaining connectivity so that all the species we share the land with can be supported or even thrive. To this end, we borrowed extensively from landscape ecology concepts when developing the strategy, including this diagram, which shows the importance of maintaining contiguous habitat in close enough proximity and of sufficient size to support biodiversity.
Jesse,
Yeah.
I just wanted to pause you for a second. The slides are not changing on your presentation.
Oh, they're not. Okay.
No, so you just have to make sure that the PowerPoint window, you are trying to change it from that window, not the meeting window.
Okay. I'm just gonna try something else. Is that working?
No.
No. Okay.
Okay, there it changed.
It changed now. Okay.
Yeah.
Are you seeing the presenter view or the sort of the back end view?
They are seeing the slides. We are seeing the full screen. Like, you might just have to use your arrow keys instead of clicking.
Okay.
Do you understand what I mean?
Yeah, I think so. All right. So let me know if this doesn't work.
Perfect.
All right.
So currently they can see the bridge picture.
Perfect.
Yes.
Okay. Sorry about that, everyone. So since connectivity can be highly disrupted in an urban landscape, we look to different types of actions to support green infrastructure in different areas of the city. In undeveloped areas, we're looking at actions to protect and manage what currently exists, whereas in built-up areas, we're looking at restoring sites that have been degraded, or ways to create stepping stone habitat or support nature in other ways. So bringing these concepts together, the strategy aims to take a network approach to the city's green infrastructure to reach our vision of sustainable habitat for people and nature. The strategy was developed in partnership with multiple community groups, including Meewasin, and informed by the input of hundreds of community members. We presented the strategy to City Council in February of 2020, including 15 actions that the city and community can take to achieve this vision. We're now in the process of implementation planning and have identified several early priorities for the next phase of work, which we will discuss today. I'll now provide a brief overview of the work we've achieved over the last year or so. Some of the following projects were led by others, so we might not be able to answer all of the questions for the upcoming slides, but we can certainly connect you with those who can. One integral action identified during the strategy was to formalize our partnership with Meewasin. Working together is far more effective than working separately, and creating a framework for collaboration that defines our common vision for the Green Network, clarifies scope, roles, and responsibilities between the two organizations, allows this to happen more effectively. This finding led to the inclusion of Action 6.5 in the strategy to update the Meewasin and City Service Agreement. This has now been completed, and the updated master agreement was formalized last year. Work now continues to further integrate our processes, particularly around natural areas management. The Urban Forest Management Plan was formally approved by City Council this March and provides a unified plan to protect and enhance the urban forest. The urban forest includes trees on public and private land and is found to sequester over 700,000 tons of carbon annually and contributes greatly to our overall quality of life. The plan's recommendations focus on planning for trees, growing, managing, and protecting the urban forest, and will contribute to the city's climate adaptation strategy. Our Natural Capital Asset Valuation project was completed in 2020 and included an assessment of two natural areas, the Small Swale and the Richard St. Barbaker Afforestation Area. Natural capital valuation is a bit of a jargony term, but in plain language, it means trying to determine the value that nature provides us, whether that be through stormwater management, habitat provision, or other ecosystem services. Natural capital valuation provides a mechanism to allow our green infrastructure to be accounted for in a comparable way to our gray infrastructure. This pilot project lays the groundwork for to better integrate green infrastructure into our accounting and financial processes. Last year, a review and update to the city's Boulevard Garden Guidelines was initiated. We are pleased to share that as of today, the new guidelines are available on the city's webpage, and an expansion of the program will be proposed to the Environment, Utilities, and Corporate Services Committee on April 6th. These guidelines will guide and support residents who want to transform the spaces near their homes between the sidewalk and street curb, and support several of the urban agriculture and community stewardship actions in the strategy. In 2021, we updated the environmental cash grant to include a line item specifically for green infrastructure community projects. This year's grant has been allocated, and the grant recipients will be formally announced on April 12th at the Planning, Development, and Community Services Committee meeting. We are excited to support all the cash grant recipients in implementing their projects, and will continue to look for ways to support community green infrastructure projects over the next year. Additional early priority projects described in our council report last February that are currently under development include developing education materials about the Green Network, including promotion of biodiversity and urban agriculture, collaborating with Meewasin in their educational programming with emphasis on conservation, ecology, and cultural awareness. Also a program to support green infrastructure projects through community and commercial grants or incentives, enhanced collaboration with other stakeholders such as the U of S, and school divisions around green space management. And in regards to our natural areas, prioritizing sites, assessing risk, and developing management plans or restoration work. I'll now turn things over to Katie to discuss upcoming work and engagement opportunities.
Thank you, Jessie. As Jessie mentioned, over the past year, we've had some great accomplishments, but we do have to acknowledge that we have been impacted by COVID-19, which has slowed us down a bit. In February 2020, when we brought the green infrastructure strategy forward, we had planned on one more step, an implementation plan, and that is what would create actionable projects and programs. This is something that makes it clear what we're working on, what the outcomes are expected to be, and what we need in terms of resources to do that work. And that way we can be really clear with everyone about what we're working on now and what we plan to work on in a future stage. And this implementation plan is also responding to what we heard in the Green Infrastructure Strategy engagement that we've already done. We heard concerns from stakeholders and residents that it wasn't clear how the strategy would be used by the city, how it would work with other city policies, and how its actions would be implemented. So, can you change the slide, please? So back to our green network themes that Jesse presented. For the theme of community, we have actions in 3 areas: cultural spaces, community spaces, and urban agriculture. And some of the questions and opportunities that we're considering as we develop the implementation plan include, we want to know what education and incentives will be effective in Saskatoon to increase community awareness and incentivize green infrastructure. And what would a program or programs look like to support community-led projects? And this is work that we're planning on getting started on later this year. We want to further explore how we get started on increasing food production in our green network and move towards a comprehensive food strategy. An opportunity we're looking at is whether we can coordinate our actions in the green infrastructure strategy and the food actions that are in the solid waste reduction and diversion plan. And through our work, we want to think about how we do meaningful engagement on all of these projects as we develop them. In particular, how do we address equity and inclusion? The city has adopted a triple bottom line policy, which considers environmental, social, financial, and governance implications in all the decisions that we make. And we're also in the process of developing an equity toolkit. So both of these tools will be really useful to get us started and pointed in the right direction on addressing equity, but we also have specific considerations for each project. And we're working on how we meet the city's commitment to reconciliation through our work on the green infrastructure strategy. For example, we're in the process of learning more about traditional land use and knowledge assessments, and that is included as an action in the strategy. And it was originally proposed to be more medium term, and we're considering whether that work needs to be done earlier. A citywide traditional land use and knowledge assessment would increase our understanding of other culturally significant events or locations so that these could be commemorated in the green network. The next theme in the strategy is governance, and there are actions related to the regulatory context, green network distribution, as well as green network ownership and management. As Jesse already noted, this is an area where we have made progress with the Meewasin City Agreement, and we also have an agreement with the university. And through that, we've been exploring research opportunities. And we're interested in continuing to build those relationships, and we'll be engaging with both of these partners on our implementation plan. And as we continue to address the city's reconciliation goals, we'll continue to develop relationships with our Indigenous partners. We encourage you, if you represent a large institution or organization in our community or a different level of government, to reach out to us to explore partnership opportunities. And we're also interested in how we can make sure green space is distributed equitably. I think COVID-19 in particular has highlighted that our green space is very important, and we're wondering if social distancing measures have highlighted any inequities in our green space. The theme of open space has actions around formal and informal green space distribution, trails and greenways, and urban forest. For urban forests, we're excited about our urban forestry management plan that just went to council, and there's certainly more work to do in that area for implementation. We're also looking at remaining actions to prioritize what we want to work on first, and we'll be exploring those priorities through engagement. So for example, that includes identifying high priority green spaces to upgrade, coordination of green space renewal, addressing accessibility and connectivity barriers, and increasing access to the green network with an emphasis on walkability and active transportation. For the ecology theme, there are actions for significant natural areas, naturalized parks and features, and nature-friendly design. We've been doing a lot of work in the background on natural areas and how to protect them because we've heard that this is important. And we're right now considering what natural area management plan will look like and what outcomes we want them to have. In plain language, we want to be clear in a process to identify the natural areas and what we want to protect, apply land use protections and designations to protect those areas. We want to determine what needs to be restored, what needs to be conserved and restored. What roles does the community have in natural area conservation? We were working to define what amenities might be included in these sites and what activities we'll be doing on those sites as well. And we'll want to embed this natural areas work into our city's existing planning and development work, as well as asset management, planning, and policies. In engagement, we'll be wanting to hear what criteria we should be using when determining which natural areas should be prioritized for management plans. And that way we can present council with the prioritization and options for a phased approach to get all necessary management plan work completed. Under the ecology theme, we're looking at what we can do to build up in our built up areas as well. Because as I'm sure many of us on this call already know, the nature and cities are not two separate places, and there are many intersections and overlaps. And we're interested in how we can improve that biodiversity and ecosystem health within our city. The Green Infrastructure Strategy identifies work on wildlife-friendly standards and gave an example of bird-friendly design. Through engagement, we're looking to confirm that prioritization and to include other standards we should be considering. And in an implementation plan, we also want to consider work in other areas of sustainability that relate to standards so we can be efficient with that work and hopefully only write one set of environmental standards instead of repeatedly going back and repeating that work. We also think there's a lot of opportunity to support other projects or policies that the city is working on to embed green infrastructure within them. And over the past couple of months, we've had a lot of conversations across the city about what projects or policy work is coming up and getting involved where we can. And the final theme is stormwater, and there are lots of actions around aquatic assets and low impact development. Like previous themes, we're looking to do some of this work through supporting in progress and planned projects at the city, as well as through our partnership with MEWASN and the university. But we're also interested in where there might be opportunities to have demonstration projects for low impact development and establishing partnerships for that demonstration project work. And we're also going to be asking during engagement about incentives and what might be effective in encouraging low impact development and doing some further exploration about how we can better use stormwater as a resource. And I promise this is our final slide. I feel like I've been talking a while. We're going to be starting engagement in the next couple of months. And as already mentioned, looking for feedback on what our priority projects and programs should be and what they should include. We're scheduled to take an implementation plan to council in the fall of 2021. And it will also then go to budget in November and December later this year. If you'd like to provide feedback on the implementation plan or stay informed, you can sign up for project updates at our Engage page under Green Strategy, and the link is on this slide.
Katie and Jesse, thank you. I hope that there are armies of you in your office in the sustainability division of the city, because that is such a broad range of projects and so much important work. It's very exciting to hear about it. I have lots of questions buzzing around in my mind, and I bet other people do as well. So other people, please feel free to put your comments and questions in the chat, and we will get to them very soon. But first, we have an opportunity to hear from another important voice in this conversation. And it is my pleasure to introduce you to Andrea Lafond, who became the CEO of the MEWASN Valley Authority in the summer of 2018, at a moment when that organization was experiencing a crisis. and she's been providing calm and determined leadership there ever since. Before joining Meewasin, Andrea occupied leadership roles at Métis Employment and Training, Waniskewen, and the Saskatchewan Indian Institute of Technologies. Proudly Métis, she finds strength in her heritage and ancestry. Andrea.
Well, good evening, everyone, and thank you very much, Candace, for your kind introduction. Janelle, your poems were very touching and very meaningful. Katie and Jesse, I very much appreciated the presentation, and Candace is right. It takes an army to move forward on all these pieces. And I do want to acknowledge that I have Mike Balonis and Rennie Grills with me. So they're team members at Meewasin to help answer questions towards the end. And Amanda and Lucinda behind the scenes who have helped build my knowledge on technology to get here to you guys today. So Candace is correct. I am the Chief Executive Officer for Meewasin Valley Authority, and it is a very humbling position. And I'm very honored to have been in this role for a short 3 years. It's very important to note that Meewasin, which is Cree for beautiful, has been the steward of the South Saskatchewan River Valley for, again, a short 42 years, because we absolutely need to honor our traditional caretakers in Treaty 6 territory and homeland of our Métis. So we have a very special job. Tonight is an opportunity to provide some updates, do a bit of a deeper dive in conservation, but in all of our mandate areas. Just like I learned a ton about Meewasin in my first 3 months, and I continue to learn every day. I'm sure you guys will find out some interesting facts that you didn't know about Meewasin and get excited about some of the work that's yet ahead of us. So Meewasin Valley came to be out of a 100-year conceptual plan that was developed by architect Raymond Moriyama in partnership with the university, the province, and the city. This 100-year conceptual plan took a look at 67 square kilometers of river valley. That study anticipated that we needed to conserve the cultural and natural resources of our river valley and provide free public access, and really consider future growth and future generations in that model. They had anticipated at the end of the 100-year journey that we would embark upon, that the population within a 15-kilometer radius of the Meewasin Valley would be about 240,000 folks. We're 42 years in. And we're sitting at a population of 318,500 within a 15-kilometer radius of Meewasin Valley. So Saskatoon has grown and continues to grow, as does our outlying municipalities. This 318.5 represents a third of Saskatchewan's population, which is significant. From the 100-year plan then became Meewasin Valley Authority as an act within provincial legislation, and our governance structure that exists today, which is represented by 4 City of Saskatoon, 4 university, and 4 Province of Saskatchewan representatives. The jurisdiction that we are responsible to steward, that 67 square kilometers, for context, is about 60% in the City of Saskatoon. And oh, Mike is saying he can't see my slides. Hang on a second.
You just have to present.
Hang on here. Sorry, guys, I'm just going all over. There we go. Can folks see now? Perfect. I'm so sorry. So 60% within the City of Saskatoon and 40% out into the R.M. McCormick Park. And that's roughly 13,400 football fields that are within the jurisdiction that we're responsible to steward. The land ownership within Meewasin varies substantially. It's everything from individual land ownership to Crown City University land, as well as Meewasin itself is a land trust. And so we do have individual folks who have donated land to Meewasin. And there we go. So our mandate area is to conserve, develop, and educate the Meewasin Valley Authority, protecting those cultural and natural resources. So our job and our mandate can get quite complex, especially when you think about the conserve and develop mandate. So the develop, if you really think about that as the access points, but really we are responsible to maintain the views, the natural aesthetic and stewardship of the corridor, but so too is ensuring accessibility, safety and linkages throughout the Meewasin Valley and its trail system. So it's very much a delicate balance, and there's always a measure of tension when balancing each of our mandate areas. And again, I've been here a short 3 years. A lot of the accomplishments I talk about today have been from not only Meewasin team and board, but its partners, as well as many of you folks, I'm sure, that are tuned in today, whether you volunteered or supported Meewasin in one way or another. So Meewasin is a multi-jurisdictional entity that is structured to manage green infrastructure and to conserve that for future generations. The slide clicking is a little slow here, so I'm going to dive deeper into our mandate areas and let folks know a bit about our accomplishments and what we're up to. So Meewasin has illustrated significant conservation leadership and resource management in Canada's largest urban conservation zone. We have a diverse ecosystem, which includes forests, grasslands, freshwater, and wetland, all providing vital services for air purification, carbon storage, waste treatment, biodiversity, and erosion control. This has been quantified, and Sarita had conducted an estimated economic value of the valley's ecosystem and what that provides to our region, and that's estimated to be $182.65 million per year. Through comprehensive valley-wide resource management plans, Meewasin eradicates invasive species. We replant native plants and other targeted on-the-ground activities to enhance and restore the valley and its resources. Depending on the time of year, we are proud to host one of Saskatchewan's largest greenhouses of native plants. A lot of folks don't know that we have this. It is not kind of open it to the public just yet, but we're looking at ways where we can bring this out to the public. We report and retain critical data on managing our natural resource, and we push those reports out in a 5-year cycle through a report called State of the Valley, so you can stay tuned for that. And we are partner with a lot of folks, many provincial ministries, many municipalities at the city, and many entities like Nature Conservancy and Ducks, as we undertake a lot of our conservation projects. And I think what sets us apart from a typical conservation agency in the sense of, besides the fact that we're in an urban setting, we have that 3-part mandate. So for the last 42 years, we have focused in all of those areas. So historically, conservation agencies will conserve land, but not typically have that public access component. And other conservation agencies will do restoration, but not the educational component. So we have a nice complexity and mix within our mandate area. And our partnership with the university will typically see about 12 touch points through multiple faculties at the university, including plant sciences, ag bio, geography, and education, just to name a few. Some of the work that we're up to. So what's been nice here, and probably important for everybody, is that at a global and a national level, targets are set to conserve more space. More green space, and essentially they've been flexible, much more flexible in some of the criteria in order to help communities, provinces, and such do so. So we've been fortunate in that there's a lot of recognition around ecological corridors now, which we are, and that they're looking at other effective conservation measures as well as Indigenous protected and conserved areas. And so this has really positioned Meewasin well as a city, as well as we've recently conducted the natural areas inventory, but we are working with provincial and federal representatives to get some of Meewasin's existing sites quantified up into some of those national totals, which are also global targets. And we've set a goal as a board to propose and secure appropriate amendments to our jurisdictional boundary to reflect urban growth and meet regional demands. So it is setting the stage. A lot of work has been underway to work with these different levels of government to really actually get Meewasin on the map proper. the natural areas inventory. So I did just touch on this, but really we took worked in partnership with the city to undertake this work. And that inventory really does build upon our State of the Valley, and it was identified as a key action within our resource management plan. So this work well aligned with what we're up to, and it's really helped identify the green network within the city of Saskatoon. Through that inventory, the highlight would be that Meewasin is the largest manager of natural assets within the city of Saskatoon at a total of 14% of those classified natural assets. Valley-wide monitoring framework. This was a really important piece of work to focus on at Meewasin, and so we took a look at the summary of Meewasin's current approach, what we were currently doing from ecological monitoring, looked at different types of designs and approaches, and from there that's developed our valley-wide monitoring framework, and this has been done with a whole host of partnerships, also including Wild About Saskatoon. But the framework culminates a series of recommendations to be advanced over a 5-year period, which will serve a foundation for the Meewasin Valley-wide monitoring framework. And so we'll probably get into discussions through the Q&A towards the end. And probably the next biggest piece here, there we go, is our Canadian Prairies Prescribed Fire Exchange. And in 2020, a large group came together, and Meewasin is kind of the lead entity with multiple partners to develop curriculum and deploy a prescribed fire burning course. And that's across the 3 prairie provinces, so a central training ground. And it was a collective, as I said, of different agencies with the focus on ecosystems and biodiversity. So we know this will be a substantive project over the next 5 years. Okay, and I will touch on development. So obviously what we're known for on an international level is our trails. So we do have 92 kilometers of trail to walk, ride, and roll. All of our trail network has everything from interpretive nodes and seating and linking all these phenomenal parks and sites. We've also been recognized for our Riverbank Rink, which sees about 35,000 folks visit each year, as well as Beaver Creek at 17,000. So our 2020 stats for trail visits were 1.87 million visits. We have definitely seen that Meewasin has been a significant support to our community during a pandemic. So stats have doubled on some of those busiest sections of trail during the pandemic. And other sites that were identified within the Moriama plan, some of our historical to present day sites that we were working on, Waniscawen Heritage Park, Gabriel Dumont Park, River Landing, Chief Whitecap Park, Beaver Creek, Cranberry Flats, and the Northeast Swale were all what I would call significant sites of destination. And the work that Meewasin undertook included everything from site securement, design and development, and fundraising and restoration. And into education and experiences. So Meewasin does deliver environmental education and programming to over 3,500 children per year. We've had significant wait lists, at least since the 80s. So we've worked in partnership with both of the school divisions, and last year was our first year of deploying grab-and-go resources available to teachers online for land-based education. And so this is 1 of 5 years ahead of us, where they second teachers to Meewasin to develop those materials. They're amazing. And they're meaningful, and they align with multiple areas of curriculum. The second piece that we undertook and has become really relevant in the period of COVID was we were fortunate to receive funding from Western Diversification to deploy a digital app. And this allows folks to navigate and learn about the First Nation and Métis history and relationship to the land, and also the respect for nature aspects. So this actually should be going live. The due date was today, so stay tuned for announcements. The central focus of some of the hard surface panels will be out at the Northeast Swale that allow folks to explore, and the app is terrific because we have some great videos and linkages to the valley. This will be a key piece of infrastructure because it's going to allow us to link our community and eventually visitors to experiences throughout the corridor, whether they're Meewasin-led or partner-led. And so there's a lot of focus here on kind of the economic advantages of us partnering within this region. And we're working on multi-day experience packages with all of the partners within the region. And here we go. Another piece we're looking to incorporate is a volunteer framework. We do have a lot of folks very interested in volunteering for Meewasin, primarily focused in citizen science. And so we are just in the throes of this fiscal year starting to develop out that framework. There are quite a bit of folks, and so ensuring that we have solid policies, procedures, and a dedicated person to that position will allow for a lot more boots on the ground when it comes to the work that's needed within the Valley. So public opinion and support of Meewasin. Every 5 years, we conduct a public opinion survey. These are the results from 2021. So 89% of the city residents recognize Meewasin as Saskatoon's most important attribute. The top 5 attributes that they commonly describe about Meewasin is that it's a place they'd recommend to others, improves their quality of life, promotes healthy living, and makes them feel proud to live in Saskatoon, and is accessible to everyone. So this is a stat from 2021. Our 5-year cycle was actually 2019, and we reran the stats for 2021 because we wanted to see, of course, the impacts of the pandemic. And as you can see here, that most of the stats and numbers went up. There's strong recognition now and acknowledgement, even to the fact that Meewasin does help boost our local economy, how that improves the quality of life, that we are a good use of taxpaying dollars, and again, that 89%, which I just reported on, and that we provide great entertainment options for our residents. Now go to the second slide, which is more, we'll go back one. There we go. And this is just more, identification on funding. We are valued as a trustworthy organization. There is a belief that we do need to expand our boundaries to keep up with urban development. Most folks are quite happy to put more dollars into infrastructure to support the utilization, and trail and natural areas support physical and mental health. And 83% of folks have noticed how Meewasin's become more important during a pandemic. So into the work that I've certainly had to take on as Meewasin was really, now I need to describe this. So I know Candace said I came in at a kind of a tough time. There have been budget cuts. But truthfully, we're very lucky in Saskatoon. As I said, we have the largest urban conservation zone, and it didn't happen by accident. It did happen because of a 100-year plan, because of thoughtfulness of our city 42 years ago. And I would even go broader to say there were a lot of, I would say, important things besides Meewasin that were implemented well over 40 years ago. Institutes I've worked for, such as SIIT, also some of the first urban reserves. And so we do have an entity that has been focused in the areas of flood and climate mitigation, as well as focused on reconciliation for over 42 years. And it is something we can all be proud of, because I think it is that land that connects our diverse community. And as I said, we always have that opportunity to learn. But as you can appreciate, the different impacts of this green space and my role to ensure that Meewasin, has long-term sustainability, it really was about re-educating and developing new relationships and enhancing existing relationships. And so you can appreciate the different ministries, municipal departments, and federal ministries that I really did need to get the message out on Meewasin. So I spent a lot of time there. We're really proud to have signed, again, that master agreement with the city of Saskatoon and to take a relook at Meewasin and that relationship. More recently, our MOU with the University of Saskatchewan. More recently, a unanimous support from Saskatoon Tribal Council for an MOU with them. We're presently in the works with the Métis Nation of Saskatchewan, as well as the FSIN. So it's been really very important, all of these new partnerships and reaffirming some of our existing partnerships, which again, we are getting Meewasin not only on the map, but on the minds. And that's really helping the work that I have. So working towards a cohesive and appropriate funding model. And so that, in my mind, is all the updates on Meewasin and what we're up to as a gal born and raised in urban Saskatoon, and spending tons of time in the valley, only when the trail went as far as Meewasin Park, to have seen the growth and then to get an opportunity to work with a fantastic team and a very passionate community really is such an honor. So I do want to thank everyone for their time.
Andrea, thank you very much for bringing us up to date on these most recent the most recent progress at Meewasin, the firework, the conversations with the federal government. These are all really exciting developments. We do have time for some questions, and I can see there are some in the chat already. I have one as well, and I will address this to whoever would like to answer. We know that the work that you're doing comes out of thoughtfulness and out of care and with the very, very best of intentions. We also know that the progress is sometimes from the outside seems very, very slow. And so I'm thinking of the Small Swale, for example, that extension of the Northeast Swale, still again, old river courses, such important natural areas. We already know, we don't really need to do lots of assessments. We know these places are really, really important. We know they're sites for education and enjoyment, for cultural reconnection. And everybody agrees that that area should be defined and protected, and yet nothing's happening. And meanwhile, the city is planning a subdivision in that sector. The Ministry of Highways is making detailed preparations for a 4-lane highway to go right through the Small Swale. So how do we get ahead of the development? What tools do we have that could, for lack of a better word, weaponize, could actualize, activate the value of the Small Swale and other natural areas and earn these places the protection they need and deserve in a timely way?
Well, thank you, Candace. I will, I agree. I know some of this work does take time, as does some of the opportunities for resourcing this type of work. And so I know Mike's been intimately involved on our side as it relates to the Small Swale and the MOU that we have on the city. So I'll probably turn that over to him. And then I'm assuming it's Katie, I can see her nodding, that will probably speak from the city's perspective.
Thanks, Andrea, and thanks for the question, Candace. So I'm Mike Valonis, Manager of Planning and Conservation with the Meewasin Valley Authority. Can everybody hear me before I carry on? Thumbs up. Thanks, Andrea. So I would echo Andrea's sentiment that we agree that things can move slowly and that the Small Swale and other natural areas within the Saskatoon region are incredibly important. And there's been a few pieces of policy, I think really important pieces of policy over the last sort of 5 to 10 years that have gradually advanced us to a place where we are getting closer to the kind of protection that I think you, Candace, and folks on this call are probably seeking. And I think it's important to know that Meewasin has a policy called the Northeast Policy, which covers the Northeast quadrant of our jurisdiction that Andrea spoke about. So that's everything east of the river and north of College Drive. And that includes areas like the Northeast Swale and the Small Swale. And we worked very closely with the city in 2014 and 2015 on an update to that policy, alongside their updates to the University Heights sector plan. So what we call the Northeast sector, the city calls the University Heights sector. So it's all that same sort of quadrant of the city. And so within our policy, we identified what we call priority areas for inclusion within the Meewasin Valley. And that includes the small swale, and it includes areas of the riverbank and portions of the northeast swale that were added to the city in the annexation that took place in 2010. So there's a sort of a policy directive between Meewasin that Meewasin and the city have both agreed to add that land. Concurrent with that, Meewasin and the city signed an MOU that sort of laid out a process for how adding significant areas of land to Meewasin's jurisdiction might happen. And I think it's important to note that significant additions of land to Meewasin's jurisdiction have not really happened in our 42-year history. We started off with a certain area, and it hasn't really changed that much since about 1982. So we didn't really have a process in place. So the MOU lays out how we might go about that, and it acknowledges a few things. One is that the nature of Meewasin's legislation is that we can only add legally surveyed parcels of land, and those are typically big squares. They don't follow natural boundaries. They don't know where the small swale is. They just know where quarter section lines are, where grid roads are. And so we would have to add the land by those sort of big squares unless a subdivision took place or a land survey to carve out the small swale. And the challenge with that is, first of all, subdivision and surveying is a very expensive process. And before we can do that expensive process, we have to undertake the also costly and resource intensive process of defining where the edges of the swale are. We have a much clearer sense of where the edges of the northeast swale are, but even with that natural area, we don't know where the north boundary is precisely. And that will happen as development occurs. And we work with the developer, Saskatoon Land in most cases, to refine the edge of that natural area. So that process is ongoing. Agreed. It's slow. Certainly, we have been collecting data slowly over the years. Some of it through our natural areas inventory, which the city contracted Meewasin to conduct through this whole city area. So we have collected some data from citizen science and just incidental observations, and we have collected some data through a contract with the Ministry of Highways and Infrastructure for the Saskatoon Freeway. So we've learned a lot about the small swale since the 2015 update to our Northeast policy. And I would say that the city's complementary policy that I mentioned, the University Heights Sector Plan, does designate the small swale some notion of where it is as a protected area, meaning that there won't be development there. Is there more that can be done? Yes. Are we working on that more? Yes. And I think one really important piece is what Katie and Jesse have spoken about at length, which is the Green Infrastructure Strategy, which formally acknowledges all of the natural areas in the Saskatoon region. The P4G region outside of that, so the communities surrounding Saskatoon, have a land use plan that also acknowledges that green network, and it's really just an extension of the Northeast Swale, the small swale, and so on. And so we are in a better position now than we have ever been between Meewasin and the city and all of us in this community to acknowledge and protect natural areas. And it's an incremental process. It's step by step, and I'm sure it's frustrating. It's frustrating for us as well. We would like to move at light speed, and I'm not sure if that satisfies the heart and soul of the question, but that's sort of the update I can provide.
Do you think that, Katie, that the city's triple bottom line will help to give these areas adequate protection, to put some muscle behind this intention?
Yeah, I think the triple bottom line is a great tool, because it means that we're no longer just assessing things based on the bottom line, the old bottom line of finance. We're looking at things from an environmental perspective, from a social perspective, and also from governance. And that's where our partnership with Meewasin is just so important. So I think that does help bring in this new perspective that, and it's not even new, but it makes sure that we are bringing in that full perspective, and we're expected to have that perspective with every decision we bring to council. And I just want to echo that what Mike and Andrea said, that this does, I know it feels slow and it probably looks so slow from the outside, but I am in meetings with Mike probably every other week about our natural area management plans and working through how do city and the Meewasin start speaking the same language on these things so that we don't have to do 3 different natural area screenings, and hopefully or site inventories or whatever, because we're not even using the same language, and we want to make sure that we're doing the same thing that serves both of our organizations, that protects our natural areas. So we've, and I know it's behind the scenes work, and we're hoping that in our implementation plan, we'll be able to prioritize natural area protection, have good criteria for which areas should be prioritized. And it's very easily could be the small swale, but I would want that process to just, I know it's slow, I guess, but there is a process, and anyone on this call will have that opportunity to have input into it in the next couple of months.
Yes, the frustration is that the development proceeds at its own rate, and all this behind the scenes work, as valuable and important as it is, doesn't have quite the same energy. Not denigrating your efforts at all, but it doesn't have that dollar and cents kind of trajectory to it. So just know that lots of us care about your success. There's some questions from the chat here that I'd like to put to you. Question number 1, how soon might the city implement simple green infrastructure financial incentives for stormwater projects for residents and businesses?
I could take that one. So through the green infrastructure strategy, we're looking at a number of opportunities to increase low impact development in built up areas of the city, and low impact development kind of includes green roofs and other forms of on-site stormwater management. I did notice in the chat that there was a few other questions that were related to this, so I might just kind of provide a bit of a combined answer here. We do have a number of incentive programs already available. There's the aforementioned environmental cash grant that we discussed in the presentation. There's also a stormwater management credit program that's designed to provide a reduction in stormwater charges to multi-residential or non-residential property owners who've implemented various best practices such as LID or green roofs and bioswales and that sort of thing. So first off, we would like to do a bit of an inventory of the opportunities for low impact development that are already out there, and determine what opportunities are there to either enhance those existing incentive programs or add new ones. And I think that would relate to the question about stormwater filtration systems as well. It kind of depends on our opportunity analysis and some of the best practices that we determined there. But we would be looking at that under the stormwater theme that we discussed in the presentation.
I'd love to hear more about the opportunities that exist under the federal government's Canada Target 1. Are there opportunities there for land acquisition? Has there been any excited talk about an urban national park in Saskatoon? What kind of direction are those conversations taking?
Sure, so I can speak a little bit. So with the Target 1 piece, we've talked earlier in my presentation, I talked about how we're getting basically some of the lands just within Meewasin jurisdiction up into those targets. So I think we've completed Meewasin sites, and we're now working with the university and starting work with the city on sites within that jurisdiction. So that's just getting us on the map, which then really does set the stage for us to plan in partnership with the city and other partners, probably Wanuskewin and Heritage Park, to look at opportunities for conserving spaces under some of those Target 1 grants, which have yet to open up. And certainly in the fall, I think it was late November, there was a speech from the throne in recognition of some of those targets to conserve more space, but also in lieu of COVID, and the need to expand urban parks. So that's a pretty strong signal that those opportunities are ready. I've had the opportunity to present federally to both Parks and Environment on Meewasin, and so there's really keen knowledge and understanding of wanting to work with Meewasin and the city on opportunities. So I think it's just, you know, as funding pots become announced and become open, we would definitely move forward on those.
Well, we hear that the Minister of Environment, Mr. Wilkinson, is a Saskatoon boy and would love to do some good work here. So yeah, more power to you in that. Another question from the chat. Are we encouraging other types of home building, such as passive house design or small houses on large garden plots? Anything other than the large houses or condos that go into new developments? I see nodding.
Yeah, I can take that one. You're gonna have to apologize. I'm gonna have to read this because this is more about our low emissions community plan, which I am not the lead on, but I thankfully have access to some of the content from it right here. So our low emissions community plan includes recommendations for energy efficiency retrofits, as well as incentives for energy efficient and net zero ready buildings. And we have a home energy loan program is under development, and it will provide up to $60,000 in loan on homeowners' taxes to pay for energy retrofits. And the LEC does speak to energy efficient new homes. Saskatoon Land has provided an incentive for passive homes in Aspen Ridge. So 12 lots have been allocated for passive house construction. And the purpose of this pilot is to contribute to education and training of local builders on how to construct net zero and net zero ready homes, contributing to the public and potential new home buyers education regarding the benefits of owning and living in net zero homes, evaluating the feasibility of building and selling net zero homes in the Saskatoon market, and determining financial, technical, or other barriers in new building net zero homes in Saskatoon. And it contributes to the city's goal of reducing greenhouse gas emissions and achieving a net zero homes beginning in August 2021 or 2022. And there's another LEC action that anticipates the creation of a STEP code, which is, I believe, part of the building code, which would lead to passive house standard as kind of the top step. And discussion with the community and industry would happen at that time, if it does, with our staff that are working on the LEC plan. So we're watching kind of changes to the National Building Code, which might come out in 2021 or 2022. So I hope that says that yes, we're working in that area. I think there was a second part to that question about small houses on larger garden lots, and I don't have that information at my fingertips. But if you provide contact information, or I think our contact information will be provided, you can reach out and I can dig around and figure out who at the city can help answer that question.
I think you will hear me better if I turn the microphone on. We have a number of other questions in the chat, and unfortunately, we're not going to get to them all, but we would be happy to provide answers if you want to give us your contact information. There's a question about community greenhouses for propagation of native plants. And you should know on this call, we have Rennie Grills, who with his wife, Lisa, runs a native plant nursery from Aberdeen. And on May 12th, for our next Nature City conversation, we'll have Rennie and Lisa and Chet Neufeld from the Native Plant Society, and we will be talking about all things native plant gardening. So we hope that you will join us again for that. We have questions here about the wetlands in Lakewood, about studies that need to be done, ecological connectivity study for the city. Certainly we know that there's interest too in access and those kinds of research. So I think that this conversation will demonstrate to all of us who are involved that there is a lot of interest in our community in the work that you are doing, and that it matters very deeply in very, very many ways. So we promised ourselves that this would not overrun an hour and a quarter, which is probably, to prevent us all from becoming completely Google-eyed. So I'm going to thank you all very much, Amanda and Lucinda, for providing the technical backup that made this all run smoothly. Janelle for, as she said, framing our conversation in a good way. Katie and Jesse for that very careful and thorough update on what's happening at the city. Andrea, Mike, and Rennie, the uncharacteristically silent partner, for bringing us your enthusiasm for the work that you do. Thank you all very much for being with us, and please do plan to join us again on the 12th of May. Good night.